For my sister, she was shot dead in cold blood in the middle of a street.
We need the truth. We need the truth above all. I think the truth would be justice in itself.
We have so many victims, so many people who are still hurting today.
If in any circumstance any of that has a connection with myself in relation to people levelling allegations or whatever, then I will deal with that. That's not a difficulty for me whatsoever.
The new Northern Ireland can be deceptive. It looks like it has left the past behind, but actually that legacy of the Troubles is always present, and no one knows how to deal with it. What do you do with hundreds upon hundreds of unsolved murder cases? Pursue prosecutions? Forget prosecutions and just pursue the truth? There's a danger that victims could end up with neither. If the politicians can't find a solution, and soon, the bereaved and injured could lose their best hope of truth or justice. An old home movie and memories. They are all Anne Travers has left. Her older sister Mary was shot dead, and their father, a resident magistrate, wounded by the IRA.
I didn't have my sister whenever I got married, to share things with, to ask advice about, to speak about my children. It was all taken away. And when she was murdered, it left a huge void in all of our lives. She was shot dead in cold blood in the middle of a street. She was completely innocent. She was 23 years of age, walking home from Mass. You would not, in a normal society, stop looking for a murderer. And that is what's happened with her.
15 people died in the Loyalist bombing of McGurk's Bar in Belfast. Kitty Irvine was one of them. 4.5 decades later, her son Sam vividly recalls the explosion.
And I could see the smoke out my bedroom window. I could see the smoke. I eventually took my fingers out of my ears, and just at that, the door rapped. And I could hear my aunt saying, "Oh no, not Kitty, not Kitty." And I went down the stairs, and I could see my granny sitting on the settee, looking at the imitation fire that used to go around with the flames, and I could see the tears. And I went and sat by her knee. It just stroked my hair.
Relatives have long alleged that the state colluded with the Loyalists who bombed McGurk's Bar. For them, the security forces have questions to answer too, not just the paramilitaries. With the legacy of violence casting a shadow over peace, Northern Ireland's politicians agreed a 4-point plan. A new historical investigations team, a truth recovery process, a mental trauma service, and an oral history archive of victims' stories. But none of it is up and running because the British government has concerns about national security. Sinn Féin doesn't buy the claim that the release of some state files would pose a threat.
What we need to see is, first of all, the agreement go live, because that will be the test then for both the British government and for Irish Republicans as to whether or not they're willing to cooperate to satisfy the needs of victims.
Are you, Martin McGuinness, at a point where you're ready to tell the truth about what you did and what you know?
Well, you see, the mechanisms and structures that we have agreed be established make provision for families who have a grievance and who are requiring a resolution to their grievance to go forward to these tribunals. If in any circumstance any of that has a connection with myself in relation to people levelling allegations or whatever, then I will deal with that. That's not a difficulty for me whatsoever.
John Kelly, a police reservist, survived an IRA shooting. His daughter survived the bombing of her school bus. She's First Minister now and keeping the door open to prosecutions.
Certainly from my part, there is very much a willingness to find a solution, but it must be a solution that doesn't rewrite the past, that does hold out the prospect of justice for victims, if it can be even pursued at this late stage, because of course we know that some victims have been beneficiaries of new technology through DNA and things like that. So it's important that justice still remains out there for people. But it's also important that we deal with this issue so that we can build for the future.
3,500 people died in the Troubles. 3,000 murders have never been completely solved. The Police Service of Northern Ireland holds 9 million documents related to them. In his first interview since taking charge of justice and legacy issues, Assistant Chief Constable Mark Hamilton conceded that police need more resources to tackle the mountain of historical cases.
The Police Service of Northern Ireland has 6,700 officers. You could argue you could put every one of them toward resolving the issues of the Troubles, but we weren't created to do that. The PSNI was created as a result of the peace process to police a new arrangement. Therefore, there aren't the resources in play today to investigate all these crimes concurrently, and therefore we have to apply some kind of mechanism to decide what we can do in the timescales that we have.
Anthony McIntyre served 18 years in prison for murder. The former IRA member is a critic of Sinn Féin. He says it's time to draw a line under Troubles prosecutions.
I don't think that the past should be protected from investigation. I think it should be shielded from prosecution, because prosecution derives truth underground. People are going to be much less candid. And although that's a difficult one for the victims to have to swallow, but I feel that the victims are left with a terrible choice here, that they choose justice through retribution or justice through revelation.
There were hundreds of bombings and shootings, leaving tens of thousands bereaved or suffering. But there is no monolithic group of victims. Their views on truth and justice differ greatly. The Poppy Day bombing in Enniskillen claimed 12 lives. Relatives say any process that recovers truth but lets perpetrators escape prosecution would send a dangerous signal to other terrorists.
You should never give up on justice, even if, and yes, there's all sorts of things about, that as time goes on, things get more difficult. But there's a difference between accepting that things may not be possible and actively making them impossible. I think a very important part of it has to be a common understanding and acceptance that the terrorism was not justified and was totally immoral and not understandable, or whatever those phrases that people use, and not acceptable. And there's not some sort of different thing that makes Northern Ireland exceptional that means that murder's okay. It wasn't.
14 people were shot dead when British soldiers opened fire during a civil rights march in Londonderry. A public inquiry exonerated the Bloody Sunday victims. Their families got the truth.
What happened on Bloody Sunday was both unjustified and unjustifiable. It was wrong.
For me, it made a huge difference. As someone who wasn't actually in Derry on the day of Bloody Sunday, it was a huge difference to learn the facts and know what transpired. But for lots of Derry people, they were there, they knew.
Martin McGuinness has admitted that he was the IRA's second in command on Bloody Sunday. But the terror group has a code of silence, so do former members envisage him revealing more?
No, I don't. But I do see an awful lot of other people who will tell you the exact truth about many cases, not because of Martin McGuinness, but in spite of Martin McGuinness.
And are the police service and other security agencies prepared to talk about the past?
It's really important that the police service in particular doesn't hide away from embarrassing facts or from uncomfortable truths. And my Chief Constable is very clear about that, and nor are we going to. Equally, it's really important that we don't hand out information that would put lives at risk.
Things are very different in Belfast now, but Sam Irvine still needs to know why his mother had to die, and hopes a truth recovery process can provide the answer.
And we need the truth. We need the truth above all. More than I would say, I think the truth would be justice in itself. With the truth, that there will be naming and shaming anyway. and people will know who the perpetrators were. And if it did come from the higher echelons of government, people will know who they are.
But Anne Travers says an amnesty would be immoral, that victims like her sister deserve justice, and anyone with information about the past needs to help her family find closure.
We have got very senior politicians, we've got very senior Republicans who are now lauded throughout the world as being peacemakers. We have senior government ministers who are lauded around the world as being fantastic for helping with the Good Friday Agreement. And if any one of them knows anything about any murder, or knew anything before a murder happened, or before an instance happened, before a bombing happened, then they need to come forward. They need to be held to account. There is nobody who is above the law.
There won't be truth recovery unless participants are granted total confidentiality. But there won't be convictions either unless prosecutors are granted access to all available information. One process could compromise the other. Those grappling with that fundamental tension are under pressure to find a balance this autumn before the plan unravels. They are, in effect, attempting to write the final chapter of the peace process to help those left behind find healing.
Myself and my family pay regular visits to the graveyard, and we always come away with something missing. It's as if it's one that disappeared, only it's the truth that has disappeared. And if we knew the truth, I would come away feeling wholesome.
I don't care if some government minister or some whoever is embarrassed. I just want to be able to say, to be able to close my eyes and be able to say to my sister, there you are, Mary. Rest in peace.